Hello there, I'm the Biz Manager and welcome to this quick video in which I'm going to try to defend Company of Heroes 3. I'm going to do my best to present my opinion on this game, which I believe has received some undeserved negative criticism, and I will attempt my best to address it in the most factual way possible. So, a quick introduction first, because, well, you might be a new player to Company of Heroes, you might want to try it out, but you see all of this negativity going, and whenever you look at the reviews on Steam, you think to yourself, no way I'm gonna give my money to this. So, here's a quick introduction to the game. It is an RTS, mostly focused on tactics other than macro, while other RTSs are a mix of both macro and micro, in which you try to spam more units than your opponent and then you micro those units to beat your opponent. In this game you can forgo the spamming of units because it's mostly focused on tactics. You have mechanics such as cover, true sight, destructible terrain and many other things that turn it into a delightful RTS to play. Not only that, the animations are pretty good and that helps a lot, but that's other things. So, with that out of the way, let's address most of the criticism. I have scrolled through the reviews on Steam and I kinda watched a few videos so that I knew what are most of the concerns and complaints that people have with this game. And I kinda distilled it down to 4 main points. Graphics, animations, sounds, and the 4th point is not really related to the game itself, which is it's related to Relic, the company that produces, or in this case develops, the game. They have they have an interesting story, so let's just say it is a relevant point to be addressed as well. So, with that in mind, and given that every time you look at one of these reviews and you see something along the lines, the graphics suck, Company of Heroes 2 was better. The sound sucks, Company of Heroes 2 was better. I thought to myself, how about I still have the Company of Heroes 2 installed in my computer, I played that game until the last second that Company of Heroes 3 came out, so how about we compare them side by side so that you can see with your eyes if these allegations are true or not.
Armor here. All right, get us over there. Move us out. This place. Driver over to that location. Get this tin can moving! Right on! 50 cal on the way! This one's German on point. We need to park it over there, man. Keep your spacing, don't bunch up.
So, as we could see, the models are somewhat similar, the tanks are clearly much better, but now we come into the part where I believe the biggest difference lies: the explosions and flame effects.
We have munitions ready to be used, Commander. Keep coming!
With graphics and animations out of the way, let's focus on sound next, shall we? Let's play a little exercise. I'm going to black out the screen and I'm going to play 2 sounds for you, and you're gonna tell me which one sounds better.
Spacey, don't bunch up.
Now, before we progress, let me know down below which one sounded better, number 1 or number 2. Well, number 1 is for Company of Heroes 2 and number 2 is for Company of Heroes 3. Now, let's make a small side-by-side of infantry firing their weapons and tanks firing their weapons and other situations like that, but instead of focusing on the graphics and the animations, let's try to focus on the sound.
Watch your flow. We're there. Sharp back down and transport. Sherman tank finished and ready.
The sound effects, at least to me, sound more impactful and intense in Company of Heroes 3, especially for the artillery, for example. Now, I do admit there is a few issues with sound that I have experienced, especially when it comes to the balancing of the sound, because sometimes when it comes to small arms fire, I can hear like the AI fighting the AI like on the distance, like my co-op AI partner fighting the enemy like over on the distance, and I can hear it as clearly as if it was my units. So there is a little bit of unbalance when it comes to the audio, but when it comes to the quality of the audio, I find it hard to believe that you know, the previous iteration was better, at least in my honest opinion. So, as we could see, like, it's not like the graphics have like been revolutionized, right? This is not the Crysis 4 of this generation, okay? However, to mention that Company of Heroes 2 was better is not really fair, especially because you need to consider that Company of Heroes 2 had roughly 12 years of polish. And it's not really fair to compare a game that has just been released to a game that has been polished for 12 years, okay? I don't think it is fair. A more fair comparison would be to compare Company of Heroes 3 on release versus Company of Heroes 2 on release. And if you do that, Company of Heroes 3 looks like a 10 out of 10, Game of the Year, best game ever, revolutionization of gaming industry. It's like nothing that you ever seen before. Because Company of Heroes 2 had like one of the worst releases that I have ever experienced in my gaming life. The game was straight up broken. It was unplayable. Okay, my friends? Not that I had the best computer at the time, but by golly, Jesus, like, the graphic comparison between 1 and 2 is similar to 2 and 3. It's not like a huge leap, but it's noticeable. And yet the game ran so bad. So bad. It was terrible, okay? The performance of the game was terrible. There was tons and tons of visual glitches and bugs, and some unfortunate people had a combination of hardware and software that led to certain game events not triggering correctly and made it impossible for you to progress with the game. Yeah, that's kind of terrible. Like, I experienced that in the winter mission. I don't remember the name. I call it the winter mission because it fucking sucks. It sucks. It introduces the worst mechanic ever in gaming history, the winter mechanic. Like, it's pretty much like because Company of Heroes 2 is set in the Soviet part of the conflict, right, in the Germans invading Russia, it's, you know, set in the winter. Because, like, if you know anything about history, the Germans invaded the Soviet because they thought they could do it before the winter, but that was not true, and so winter messed them up royally, and so you have to, you know, go through that part of history. And you have the blizzard mechanic, in which your units will die if they are exposed to the elements. And that mission introduces that mechanic, and you start with a squad, and you are ordered to move your squad towards a fire so that they can eat up and not die. The thing is, the fire would not trigger. Like, you would get the units to the fire, but the fire would not work and your units would die. At least in my case. And I had to repeat the mission like 5 times before finally the event triggered correctly and I was able to progress with the mission. And then I failed the mission and I had to repeat that, like, initial part like 5 more times until it triggered again. So let's just say it was terrible, okay? So if you compare the two of them, you can clearly see that Company of Heroes 3 is much better. Not only that, but here's the thing. Company of Heroes 2 was released with only 2 factions and 1 campaign, in a game that has 5 factions. The other 3 factions were DLC locked. Can you imagine, back in 2010, Blizzard releases StarCraft 2 and tells you, hey, you can only play Terran because this is Wings of Liberty. You wanna play Zerg? You have to pay for the Art of the Swarm, otherwise screw you. No, like that makes no sense, right? But yet they did that, so you can start to see where the 4th point is coming into fruition, right? Relic has some shady business practice. However, I want to point out one thing, okay? This is nothing new for Relic. Not that it justifies it, but let's put it into historical context. My first experience with the Relic game was Dawn of War 1 for the Warhammer 40k universe, and let me tell you, my mind blew back in 2004. Like, that was the thing that made me fall in love with Relic RTSs, and then Dawn of War 2 came along and screw all of that, but it doesn't matter, because, yeah, like, you already can see the beginnings of the mechanics that exist today in Company of Heroes franchise, which is cover, destructible terrain, like long-range artillery, emphasis on big, bad explosions, steam weapons, stuff like that. So, yeah, and guess what? Guess what happened back then? The game came out with 4 factions, the Marines, the Orcs, the Eldar, and the Chaos. However, there are more factions in that game, which were locked behind the DLC. The first DLC was the Winter's... whatever, Winter something, that introduced the Imperium Guard. A faction locked behind DLC. At least they had the decency of giving you a campaign for it, but, you know... one of those things. So, once again, putting it into historical context, not that it justifies it, it's just nothing new for Relic to have these kinds of behaviors. And by the way, back then Relic was owned by THQ, the same publisher that published the Stalker games, so this is not exactly Sega's end doing this business. This is a feature, not a bug for Relic. But with that in mind, let's put into the Company of Heroes context, in which Company of Heroes 2 has 2 factions, 1 campaign for 5 total factions, and then Company of Heroes 3 has 4 factions and 2 campaigns, so you have double the amount of stuff that the previous game had. I mean, isn't that, like, better? Isn't that, like, going in the correct path? Even though it's not perfect, it's far better than we had before. So, like, it's a W, in my opinion, okay? It's a pro-consumer thing, and so I have to say that at least I approve of it, and I'm happy. Of course, I wish all the things were unlocked right now and I didn't have to pay for more DLC, because guess what, I'm pretty certain there will be more factions and there will be more DLCs and more stuff that you will have to buy, but no, it's better now than it used to be, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that the game is perfect. I have already experienced a couple of small issues and bugs. Now, for example, there is like this psychedelic texture glitch where the texture just starts flickering, I experienced that, but here's the thing, that's not really the game's fault, that's your driver's fault, because I updated the drivers and it stopped happening. But funny enough, like I updated my drivers, it stopped happening. After like 3 days it started happening again, and I was like, what the hell? I went, I checked, I had more drivers to be updated, and then I updated the drivers again, and the issue was gone again. I'm not a technical guy, but I was a bit confused how, like, what, the game knows when there is drivers to update, what the hell, like, thank you for the warning, but it's one of those things. So yeah, that is the most glaring issue, like the texture flickering a lot, but that's a driver's issue, not a game issue. I also found a couple of typos in the descriptions, and anything else that I found that was oof, now this one is a doozy. Your sensitivity issues in the settings, they don't memorize for some reason. And by the way, it's not like you close the application and open it again and the settings restart or get defaulted. No. Between games, the settings, they default back to 100%. Like if you put your mouse sensitivity to 25%, you start the game, it goes back to 100%. You need to open the settings in that game, reduce the sensitivity, and then after the game is done, it gets back to 100%. Like, I don't understand why the hell that, like, the thing doesn't memorize. It memorizes the other options, but not the sensitivity one. Also in the skirmish menu, it does not memorize the factions like it used to in the Company of Heroes 2. And it puts Americans in the German side for some reason. Like, it's minor stuff, but a bit annoying. But, you know, nothing compared to the broken state of Company of Heroes 2, so to be fair, it's minute, easily patched out, especially the typos and the texture bullshit, and like I'm pretty certain that from the developer standpoint, these are not, oh my god, major issues. Now, one thing that I read just a few, and this is not a very popular argument, but I've seen a couple of comments and things like, the sounds were better, or something was better in Company of Heroes 2. Why didn't they use that in Company of Heroes 3? I just want to point out one thing. Company of Heroes 2 and 3 are made in different engines. I believe Company of Heroes 2 is Avoc engine, and Company of Heroes 3, it's their own their own engine. Okay, I can't say it. Proprietary. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a native English speaker, so yeah, you understand what I try to say, right? It's their own engine. So they had to build the game from the ground up, like from scratch, from zero. And just the fact that they transitioned engines, and the game is just, it's so nice, it's like so well done. It's a W just by itself. In my opinion, of course, because usually when you do these kinds of things, there is a lot of issues that are not immediate, obvious, and like I know you are thinking, but Biz Manager, isn't that how things are supposed to be? Every time I get a new product, isn't Dante supposed to build it from the ground up? I work in the car industry, and I have bad news for you. That's not how things work. They pick the old product, and they add new stuff to the old product, and they call it a new product. That's how things work for cars, washing machines, cell phones, and gaming to an extent. Like, gaming doesn't really, like, we don't tolerate that as much, but it's still something that I'm certain exists in gaming as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. That, yeah, brand new engine, so small issues are bound to occur. And yeah, my friends, this is like pretty much like what I think. But with that said, my friends, if you are free to disagree with me, like gaming itself, like PC gaming itself is very complicated, because there is like a multitude of combination between parts and software. Like you have the same GPU, which is produced by 10 different companies, and then you have billions of processors and different RAM brands, and then you have different operational systems. Like, there is so much stuff that the different combinations of those stuff can result in unforeseen consequences, and so PC gaming is very rough on that regard. So, you know, I'm not trying to invalidate your lived experience, but you shitting on the game simply because you find it cool, now that's what we are trying to address in here, right? So, like I said, if you want to disagree with me, feel free to comment below. Just be polite about it, don't be a dickhead. And even if you are a dickhead, I won't mind, because I don't care about that kind of stuff. So, with all of that said, my friends, this is the Base Manager signing out. Bye bye.